You know what I think it is? I think it's getting older and seeing all of the infinite possibilities, both good and bad, that can happen. We're now so much more aware of how fragile, insert thing here, life, the universe, people, infrastructure, whatever it is, we now know how fragile it all is, and that there's nobody in charge, you know? We're all just trying to...
What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Kropf, and welcome back to another episode of the 52 Qs podcast, your weekly insight into the world of library production and sync music. Whether you are Bambi legs into the industry, or maybe, I don't know, you have thousands of placements, either way, I promise you, you are in the right place. As always, a huge word of thanks to our family, friends, and neighbor subscribers who really do keep all of this happening. If you want to learn more about how you can support 52Qs and also score a ton of extra subscriber perks like live streams, workshops, and Zoom feedback sessions, and more, then be sure to tune in a little bit later in today's episode. Speaking of today's episode, it's today on a very special 52Qs podcast. No cues, no real production music topic. I am welcoming Mrs. 52Q's Shannon Kropf to the podcast because we are going to be talking about the last couple of weeks. As you may have known, I went to the Production Music Conference, but then there were also hurricanes. There were two hurricanes that have come through since the last time I've been here. Also had some health things happening. And so today's topic, conference and colons and storms. Oh my, I want to welcome back to the podcast, Mrs. 52Q's Shannon. Hello, how are you, my love?
Hi, darling. I am just fine. And I went with you through all of this stuff except the conference, but you know.
You were with me. You were with me in spirit. Yes.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Especially traveling on the way back. And so what I wanted to do today, and the reason I wanted Mrs. 52Qs to join us is to give some other perspective on the last few weeks and how, wow, I feel like I've been doing a lot of grown-up things here the last few weeks. You know,
well, you are a grown-up, so
yes,
that's
I am
good.
a grown-up. I think it's just from turning 50 and then all these other things happening. So let's back up. The end of September, I went to the Production Music Conference in Los Angeles, put on by the Production Music Association, and the trip went really, really well, and kind of deciding, well, like what's my purpose there? What's my goal? But before we get into that, traveling out there went pretty well. And if you'll remember from a podcast a few weeks ago, I talked about my travel anxiety. Now, Shannon, you can confirm my travel anxiety, can you not?
I can, and it's definitely changed and gotten worse over the years. You know, it used to be kind of like, cool, whatever. And, you know, you and I we used to take a bunch of students over to Europe and no big deal. And, but lately, especially, it's been really tough for you.
Yeah. And I don't know what that is. You know, I talked on the podcast about having weird residual body image issues where I was worried about the seatbelt not fitting because I'm a big dude. And I got to say that there were zero issues. I'm happy to report I had zero issues. Not only were there zero issues, but I had room to spare. I could pull that seatbelt along even further, and the seatbelt. And so I didn't have any issues. In fact, on the way,
I can confirm. Sorry to interrupt. When he sent me a picture of like, hey, I can actually buckle my belt, which is great. But there was like actual strap left over at the end. You weren't even at the end of the buckle.
I know there's daylight to give. But that didn't keep me from packing my seatbelt extender should the worst happen.
And even worse than busting out your own seatbelt extender is having to ask the stewardess for the one that they use for the pre-flight instructions.
Yeah, because that's
the one they put to get, that's a seatbelt extender.
Yeah. And so
And
basically,
I have had to ask in the past, hey, can I use that when you're done?
because I mean, which is worse? Being in your seat with the seatbelt crammed so tight that you can barely breathe, or the embarrassment of having to ask for that or bring it out. But I was happy to report, and I am happy to report that I didn't need that. I had room to give. I was on an aisle seat. It was great. Burbank Airport, on the other hand, is way too small. It's way too small for the kind of traffic that's going in and out. I chose to fly into Burbank because flying into LAX would have meant like an hour Uber drive or hour cab ride from the airport up to Burbank versus like a 15-minute drive from the airport. But man, we got off, and I knew it was going to be a tiny airport when there were no real like gates, the way that you would see a gate, right? Basically, they were just like, and here it is, and it's open air, and we go down this little ramp onto the tarmac and then back up. I mean, it was, it was a very, very tiny airport. And when I went in, there were just people everywhere waiting to get on board, waiting to get on the plane that we are just, and it was like wall to wall people, as if like there were massive delays somewhere. But to my understanding, at least when we landed, there were no delays. And that immediately, I was like, oh, this is going to be pretty bumpy on the flight back, and don't want to get too far ahead of things. But at PMC, we stayed at the Hilton, and the Hilton is great. The staff at the Hilton is fantastic. It's within walking distance to Universal Studios, Hollywood. And so we ate there a few times. It's really, really expensive just in general because it's California and prices are a little higher in California. But to be in a hotel, which is essentially connected to a theme park, you should expect to pay theme park prices for all of the food. Right. $25 hamburgers at the hotel bar, really expensive there in the City Walk. And so, yes, it was really, really expensive. The hotel was kind of expensive. It's just really expensive to go. But I was mentally prepared for that. And, it's a tax write-off, so that's all well and good. By the way, Shannon, I literally have right here, these are all the receipts that I still need to scan in. And
well, it's a good thing that you know how to do that, isn't it?
These are legitimately all the receipts from my trip that I need to scan in onto our QuickBooks, because another part of what we did as grown-ups is we got an accountant and a tax person. And and so that's what grown-up business owners do, right?
And a lawyer.
Which that's another grown-up thing. It's just been 3 weeks. The last 3 weeks has been Dave. Dave is a grown-up. So in fact, I need to add lawyer to our show notes here, to our list of things to talk about, because that was also another surprise. But the PMC itself was amazing. And so I had a revelation while I was there, which is, why am I going to the Production Music Conference? Am I going there to recruit people into 52Qs? I mean, I wore my 52Q shirt. I also wore a Full Sail shirt, so that was really cool. But and I talked about 52Qs all the time, but I would say that the goal of me going to the PMC wasn't to advertise 52Qs, nor was it to necessarily engage with new libraries that we can bring into 52Qs and work with the briefing room and all of that. I mean, if that happens, cool, but that's not the goal. And here's what the revelation I had. Going to the PMC as an emissary of 52Qs was about strengthening the relationships that I already had. Relationships which were formed through, whether it's through mutual connections and, having just like exchanged emails with people. Like one of the publishers we work with through the briefing room here at 52Qs, I had never met in person. And we had only exchanged emails. You have exchanged many emails with this publisher.
Yes.
But he came up and introduced himself. He's like, Dave, it's me. And I'm like, there's a moment of recognition until I looked at the name tag. I'm like, oh my gosh, it is amazing to see you. And so we had lunch, also deepening the relationship with other PMA members that I had met during the virtual networking hours. In fact, I have many business cards that I got, several of whom I connected with through the virtual hangout times at PMA. And so it wasn't me like, hey, here's 52 Qs, but here's a card, here's a card, here's a card, you get a card, you get a card. It wasn't pimping 52 Qs. It wasn't saying, it wasn't advertising or soliciting a bunch of composers, but it was the business of relationship. And so that was my huge takeaway of PMC, and why, barring any medical or giant financial collapses, why I'll go every year. And in fact, Shannon, I'm going to go on the record. You have to go next year.
Okay.
Now we'll see who gets the travel anxiety, right? It's a lot easier to say, Dave, you're going to be fine when you're nice and comfy on your couch, right?
Well, for the record, yes, I was nice and comfy on my couch while the first hurricane blew through Orlando.
Okay, we'll circle back
to hurricanes. And I was home by myself.
Yeah,
nobody else who lives here was here.
Yeah, you're right.
And so I did all the stuff. I pulled all the stuff indoors and did all the blah, blah, blah. And then it was a kind of a non-event. But I just wanted to, it was a non-event here. It was devastating.
Yeah.
Further up.
Yeah, and it had an impact on our vacation. Like right now, we should be up into the mountains.
Right now.
And this is something I talked about on the podcast. We had booked this week to go up to the mountains. We were going to end up going to the mountains of Georgia and see some color, right? Because we were going to be those Floridians who drove up from Florida just to see the colors change. We have come full circle, my dear.
Yes. We used to hate those people when we lived in Boone.
We made fun of them in college. But now,
because they were always driving a white Cadillac.
They were always driving with Florida plates, and now we are them.
And now
sans
we are them.
White Cadillac.
Sans Cadillac.
Yep. And so, but you've got to come with me next year.
Okay. I used to love conferences, and when I was VP for academics at a place out in Tennessee, I had to go to a lot of them, and I was responsible for the accreditation process of the school. And so not only was I going to them for my job, I was just required to be on all the time, which I'm not great at anymore. I used to be great at it. Anyway, so it's not the idea of going to a conference. It's just this residual ick left over from going to those accreditation conferences.
Yeah. Even more important than that,
right.
More important than overcoming your residual self-image. Why do I want you to go? First of all, you're my favorite person, right? You're my best friend. We have a lot of fun. We laugh consistently with each other. And so there's that. But also, you are the other half of 52 Qs. Yes, I'm the public face, and I'm, the bouncing bear on YouTube and everything, and on Zoom sessions and everything. But this is a partnership in every sense of the word. And so you are a business partner with this. You are equal shared partner, right? You are not just Dave's helper. You're not Dave's Excel monkey or anything like that. You are equal partner in that. And I think part of that is being more visible, if you'll pardon it's being more visible in spaces like this, because I think it's important. It's important. And it sure as heck would make my travel woes a lot simpler.
Well, it would, yes.
Yeah, because the trip was great, realizing that I was there to deepen the relationships that I had in a way that just cannot be accomplished over Zoom. Sure as heck can't be accomplished in an email, but just being able to sit down and hang out with publishers, with having breakfast with folks who I've interviewed. Shout out to Yella Dittmer, who is awesome. And congratulations to him for winning a Mark Award. Congratulations to Jason Rudd at Level 77. I think they won like 4 Mark Awards.
Wow.
So huge shout out to these people doing amazing work and being able to like share airspace, I think is so critical. And so, yes, I handed out business cards. And yes, I talked about 52Qs. And there was not one moment where I didn't sit down and have somebody come by who has seen the podcast or maybe saw me on the Zoom sessions or whatever. And it's on me. I mean, it's my white glasses. I'm a big bald dude with a beard and white glasses. They stick out. And I'm not going to lie, that's kind of a choice. I had somebody who knew me from the podcast, who saw me across a courtyard and said, I recognized you from where they were serving like drinks or something like that, big courtyard, because I saw the white glasses. And I don't know how the white glasses turned into a brand, but I'm just leaning into it. And it totally works. I don't have much else in terms of fashion sense, but these white glasses are working for me. So I'm gonna keep doing it. As I saw some other folks with some really cool frames, and I'm like, oh, there's some cool white frames. But until then, my Zenni optical white glasses are doing it for me.
People recognizing you.
People recognize, which is fantastic. Which is great. I love talking to people. I love talking about 52Qs. I love hearing people's success stories, whether they were with the community or not. I love getting feedback on the way that the podcast and the community is helping people. And I like introducing people to the amazing people that were there from the community, because we had a pretty big contingent of 52Qs members who were there, some who lived in LA, some who flew out from all over the country. And it was really nice having like a little group within a group. And so we were never alone, because you would find somebody that you knew and that you recognize, that you've hung out with, in a Zoom session or in the boards or whatever. And there was instant community happening. And so that just filled my heart. Not to mention, we were having dinner and just hanging out just with some 52Qs folks. And John Meyer walked by and just had a seat. And we had dinner with John Meyer. I freaking love that guy. And he gave us this cool, this is John's business card. This is Somerville Sounds.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's this plastic luggage tag that had a QR code on the back.
Nice.
Turns out like his son 3D printed this thing. And this was just amazing. And he gave us that. And
that is so cool.
Right? And he talked about making sample libraries. He talked about being a YouTuber. And so we were able to kind of share stories from the front lines in the foxholes, right? About being YouTubers and chasing algorithms and thumbnails and filmmaking and all this stuff. And that never would have happened if we hadn't gone, right? If we hadn't gone to the PMC. So I will definitely be going. You will definitely be going, because at this point, it's the hotel room is covered. So it's just the cost of a plane ticket and your admission into the conference. Also, huge shout out to Sam and Sarah from Real Crafter. They were there. Shout out to Morgan from the PMA, who put on a stellar show. She was going 100 miles an hour the whole time. Shout out to the PMA. They took care of us. So much food. It was just a fantastic event. And so Friday morning, I get ready to leave. I do a live stream from the hotel room. You could see Universal from the room. You could see the Harry Potter land from my room. And so that was really cool. And then get get on an Uber, split it with Greg here at 52Qs, member of the community, and we drive off to Burbank. And that is when my return trip woes started, because Burbank was absolutely packed, to the point where at our gate, and keep in mind, I'm like 2 hours early. Actually, no, I'm like 2.5 hours early because I didn't know how long it was going to take there, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like 2.5 hours early. I get in, and it is wall to wall people sitting on the floor. Every chair is taken, sitting on it's basically enough room for you to walk through to get to your gate, to get on the plane. And keep in mind, the gate is outside. Turns out luggage claim is also outside. It's like an outdoor baggage claim thing. It's really weird. Burbank is a weird airport. And I get there, and immediately my kind of travel anxiety starts kicking in, because I'm like, okay, I cannot like stand up for the next 2.5 hours, and there's nowhere to sit. And as soon as I start, my panic level starts anxiety starts pinging. Somebody leaves, and I'm like, oh, this is me. And I sat down, and
screw the pregnant women. I'm sitting down. I'm kidding.
For the record, there were no pregnant women around. There were no pregnant young women around. Anyway, but no, I just sit there, and I'm like, my personal space. And I literally like put my legs around my luggage, and I just put on my headphones, and I just watched movies on my iPad.
This is when I started getting the unsettled texts.
Yes. Because it was so
I have
cramped.
pictures of this.
It was so cramped. There was nowhere to sit. It's loud. It's hot. Nobody's in a good mood. Not to mention just the elbowing that happens anytime, like when the plane is there and they start boarding, and all of the
and everybody freaks out. Like, we're all getting on the plane, people.
Yep. And the reason this is so stressful is because airlines have made it prohibitively expensive to check luggage. Mm-hmm. More and more people, myself included, are using carry-ons. But your carry-on is a rolly bag, which is big, plus like a backpack. I had a little messenger bag. And so everybody essentially has 2 carry-ons, and they physically don't have room in the plane for everybody's carry-on. They just physically don't. When I was flying back, they made the group that loaded the last 2 groups, because it's like 1 through 9. Groups 8 and 9 had to gate check their carry-ons. I was in group 4 because to stave off some of this anxiety, I paid a little bit of extra to get early boarding. I was still in coach, but I paid so that I can get on early and, be assured overhead bin space. And so I just sit there for 2.5 hours. They call the boarding. Everybody freaks out, and then get on the plane. Fine, no problem. Except that it took about an extra 45 minutes for us to take off, because there were mechanical problems from when the plane took off in, I think, Austin, I believe, because it was flying Austin to Burbank, and then that same plane is going Burbank to Dallas. Because I'm flying into Burbank and not LAX, there were no direct flights that I could find that I would be willing to pay for or fly on that went direct from Orlando to Burbank, because it's a teeny tiny airport.
So we're not even really to the crappy part yet.
No, we are setting up for for when things really, really got bad. And let's keep in perspective what bad means to anxiety, Dave. Recently, anxiety, is this just part of growing up? Is this part and parcel of, hey, you're growing up and you have things to worry about, like colonoscopies and traveling induced anxiety?
You know what I think it is? I think it's getting older and seeing all of the infinite possibilities both good and bad, that can happen. We're now so much more aware of how fragile, insert thing here,
Yeah.
life, the universe, people, infrastructure, whatever it is, where we now know how fragile it all is, and that there's nobody in charge, We're all
making it
just
up.
trying to, yes, you may be a manager and I may not, but we're all trying to do life.
Yep, we're all trying to life. That's the truth, man.
Yes.
All right, so the plane takes off nearly an hour late. Now, I only had an hour layover in Dallas. I missed my connecting flight in Dallas through no fault of my own. And in the middle of the flight, I get a notification from my American Airlines app.
So you knew you took off late.
I knew I took off late, but I was going to try.
Okay.
Because we took off about 15 minutes late out of Orlando into Dallas. And so I had to run and catch my plane to Orlando. And knowing that they close the aircraft door at 15 minutes. Like that's just like FAA rules. It's my understanding. They close it 15 minutes to take off. You cannot get on the plane. So even if the plane is sitting out there on the tarmac, they won't let you on if you are 15 minutes. So now, for the record, Dallas is a great airport, a really, really good airport. They have a train that or an above ground monorail or whatever that runs in between terminals and everything really, really fast, but not so fast that I can make up an hour because I only had
Of course.
an hour. And for whatever reason, they didn't fly any faster in the air. Can't they just go faster? Can't you just I don't know. There's a speed limit, I guess, like on highways, but can't they just, I don't know, just go a little faster? Can't you make up 30 minutes in the air on a 3.5 hour flight? I think they could.
In all honesty, I think it depends on which direction you're flying in.
That's a good point. Easy there.
Rotation of the earth.
Easy
and
there, Bill
wind
Nye.
stream,
You
jet
just
stream,
slow
and all
your
that.
roll there, Dr.
Hey,
Science.
you asked me to be here.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm just sharing my wisdom.
By the way, folks, this is life at the Kropf house. A lot of laughing, a lot of picking, a lot of love.
Yeah. A lot of love.
So missed my flight. And now I didn't even know it until I get a message from the American Airlines app mid-flight. We haven't even landed yet. It's like, you've been rebooked. I'm like, oh man, okay. Here it comes. Your flight leaves tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. and you're going to go to Miami and then Miami to Orlando. So instead of having an overall 7-hour trip, like with a 1 hour layover from Burbank to Orlando, I went Burbank late to Dallas, then had a 9-hour layover in Dallas before traveling to Miami, then to Orlando. And it was at this point that my rage meter absolutely pinged for a couple of reasons. First of all, just being like, nope, we're going to rebook you. Mind you, my travel anxiety, I had meticulously picked my seats. I knew exactly where I wanted to be on the plane. Didn't want to be back too far because I didn't want to be over the wings. I wanted to be on the aisle because I'm tall and I want to kick out a leg. And so all of these things I had meticulously planned. But when they booked me on the window in the third row from the back. And so it was at this point that I'm like, all right, it's gonna be like this, where if you were with me, we just would have rolled with it. No problem.
Yeah.
No problem.
And we have before.
Yep.
We've been delayed overnight before, and they gave us hotel vouchers and meal vouchers, and we had a lovely evening and
a bonus vacation day.
Yeah. But I think looking at it from a different perspective, from my perspective, yes, you were angry. You mentioned rage, but there was something else going on too. You were deeply triggered. about something. I don't know. And I actually talked about this in Little Chat not long after it happened. You're just, when we get triggered like that, we're just not in the place to make good decisions, period. And I use the halt, hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. Don't make any decisions when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Just leave it alone, walk away.
Because I was all those things.
And yeah, right. It's bad enough if you're one, never mind 4 of them. And you had told me that you were not going to go to the hotel. You're going to sit in the airport until the next morning at 3 o'clock when you had to come back.
Yep.
And just sit there. She's like, I'll be back here in 9 hours. I'm like, sweetie, you're going to go to the hotel.
I was not thinking clearly.
He was not thinking clearly.
Because they did. They gave me a hotel voucher. They gave me a meal voucher. And by meal voucher, it's like $12 off, right? And there's nothing in the airport you can buy for $12. But they gave me a cab voucher so American Airlines took care of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt really, really bad for the people helping you out, the customer service, the reps.
Mm-hmm.
They were doing the best they could. They just had a plane full of people who all had somewhere else to be.
Right.
Instead of Dallas.
And what was hard for me, you guys, as loved ones of people who are having some sort of traumatic experience, it's hard to watch, but you just have to speak into it as much as you can. And then Dave goes, so he's still in the airport. He doesn't know that he's got the hotel vouchers and all that, but he just goes, get me on a flight out of here tonight.
Yep.
And I'm like,
Yep. I don't care if it's like Southwest. Anything, right? I don't care. Like, find me.
I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to mash the buttons for Expedia and see what I can find.
Because I'm in line. I'm in line at customer service, like waiting to talk to somebody to see if we can get on an earlier flight or something like that.
Right. And so I did find a variety of flights, none of which was particularly helpful. And then I finally found you one that was like boarding right then. Yep. No way we were going to make it.
Nope.
So, and you got home and you were safe.
Yeah, and it would have been super expensive.
It's just that you were so triggered in the meantime.
Yeah, and since then I've tried to unpack why that stressed me so bad, and I think it was just the general travel anxiety that I've talked about on the podcast before, residual self-image, blah blah blah, but also just coming off of a week of kind of being on. You know what I mean? Because the any kind of conference it just takes a lot out of you. I know it's just like being going to lunch with people and being in boardrooms and being in conference, panels and all that stuff. But it does take a lot of energy. And so I had kind of paced myself to where I would run out of energy right when you picked me up. You know what I mean? Like I had done everything, even controlling like, what am I eating the night before so that I don't find myself in an airport in some sort of gastronomical emergency. Right. Exactly. Right. When I'm telling you folks, I had meticulously planned this. I really, really had. And so, but they put us into the hotel. I wasn't thinking in my right mind. I'm just like, I didn't want to futz with security and all of that, because that's a whole stress in and of itself, because it seems like every single airport does it differently. This one, don't take your shoes off and they'll yell at you if you take your laptop out. This one will yell at you if you don't. And so there is all of that. But long story short, Shannon was as gracious as she is beautiful. And she talked me down. I'm like really angry, falling apart. And is this too transparent? I don't care. I just want to be real with you. And this is just life, as a human. I kind of came apart that night. Once I finally got into the hotel, and once I was like, you know what? There is nothing that I can do right now. And so it's like, because I was in fight or flight or freeze mode for so long, by that point, nearly like 18 hours or so. You're in that kind of wound up space. And as soon as that came down, then emotions and everything really kind of came in behind it.
Right.
But I just want to thank you for just being so sweet and patient and speaking truth into a stressful situation. Going to the hotel was the right call, because at 3:30 in the morning, when my alarm went off so I could get up to take a shower to be at the airport 2 hours early, I thought to myself, I sure am glad I'm not sitting in an airport right now. Because
and had been sitting there for 7 or 8 hours.
Because 6.5 or 7 hours of sleep is better than no sleep in a waiting area, like at a gate. So got home, totally like crashed out after that. The rest of the weekend was, I couldn't even tell you what we did. Just total blur. Just my sleep schedule was all messed up from having woken up so early after having been, in a different time zone for a solid week. And so there was all of that. So that is PMC in a nutshell, and the travel. Next year, I'm going to do everything within my power to get a direct flight. I kind of think a 1 hour Uber ride would have been better than flying in and out of Burbank. Burbank was so stressful.
I got the messages. I can tell you that you don't want to go out of Burbank again. I've never been there. I have nothing against it, but I can tell you that you do not want to go to Burbank again.
It's like Howard from Big Bang Theory when he starts talking about going back into space. It's like, have you forgotten how miserable you were? Right. So I think an hour in an Uber would be better than all of the stress of that. Because LAX, as crazy as it is big enough to handle the amount of traffic. Burbank isn't.
Yep.
All right. So fast forward into the next week, into the next chapter of my last couple of weeks of being a grown-up. And that was
of Dave freaking out about stuff. Is that okay to say?
I'm not going to come off looking good on this episode, am I?
No, not really. Not so far.
All right. So I had a couple of months ago, or I guess it was about a month ago, had an appointment for my primary care physician, and my regular checkup, got blood work, did all of that stuff. And basically let's start addressing some of these things, which have been things that I've been putting off, whether it is talking to a nutritionist, or whether it is getting an audiologist to help me out, in diagnosing my tinnitus, or whether it is talking to a skin doctor, a dermatologist, about some moles and stuff. I mean, come on, you're watching a video. You can see that I've got I'm getting older, but also I freckle really, really easily. My father had melanoma, and so there were some things that needed to be looked at. And so just a couple of days after this whole travel thing, I had an appointment with a dermatologist where they scraped off like a mole off of my face. But I had this big bandage on my face, which is why 2 weeks ago, we didn't have a podcast episode, because I had this giant bandage from where they had scraped off a mole off of my face to go get biopsied, because that's what grownups do. You have a thing, you get a doctor to look at it, the doctor checks it out. Turns out it is precancerous. It's not cancerous, but it is precancerous, because I am very susceptible genetically to skin cancer. Shannon, did you find the picture?
I'm so sorry. You're saying this really serious.
What are you doing? What are you doing to me?
I opened up photos to see if you could send me a picture of this. And there's photos from that night in the hotel where you're so freaked out. And you're just like, clearly,
not in my right mind.
Oh my God. I'll send the one I'm looking at. I had taken a very close-up picture of my eyes, and you put the camera with the picture on it. I texted it to you, and you put it in front of your eyes, and Yes. Okay. Sorry, guys. Dave's over here talking about cancer and and hereditary diseases, and I'm laughing.
That's why I married you, baby. That's why we've worked for the last 30 years.
Yeah,
Okay.
there is that.
So,
Okay,
all right. So that was last week or the week before last. It's all a blur now. Okay. So I had this giant bandage on my face. I did not want to record a podcast episode with this giant white bandage. And then I had a Band-Aid on my face for the next couple of days, then got crazy busy. And I started working myself into a stress about, we have to have an episode. We have to have an episode. You know what? It's okay. It's okay if we don't have an episode. It is what it is. And so that was the kind of the beginning of starting to get on the other side of some of this anxiety stuff. But then fast forward a couple of days, because on the day of my mole removal, was also the first day of my low fiber eating regimen that was required for my upcoming colonoscopy. So yes, I recently got a colonoscopy, and we do have a picture of me right before in the hotel bed, in the hospital bed, giving a thumbs up. We'll have a picture if you want to see hospital gown Dave with no glasses. And so the same day that I had this giant bandage on my face, I have a very strict kind of eating diet, like no like stringy meats, no foods with food coloring in it. And so there was all this stuff that I had to follow. And so my sleep was messed up from the weekend before. Then my diet got messed up the following week. Meanwhile, this whole time I'm gone, we didn't even really touch on this. The whole time I'm gone, Hurricane Helene is like barreling towards Florida. I am watching it on the news. Orlando was spared, but meanwhile, it like a path of destruction all the way up into the mountains of North Carolina. So that's all happening. Tampa Bay gets flooded, people without power. And so it's just really, really kind of stressful. It's just a really stressful 3 weeks. And so I'm eating weird things. Then it comes to the Sunday before, because my appointment's on Monday. My colonoscopy is on Monday. And on Sunday, starting at 5 p.m., I start the liquid cleansing. They called it the bowel prep. So what it is a gallon of what essentially tasted like salt water. And I was required to drink half of it, every like 8 ounces every 15 minutes until half was done. And then starting 6 hours before my procedure, so starting at 2 a.m., I had to drink the other half of it while not having any solid food, not having anything that had like red dye or anything. And so I had mixed it with Gatorade because, of course, I went like onto the colonoscopy subreddit because that's a thing. And turns out super helpful, people talking about which Gatorade to use. And so I knew that glacial cherry was my jam. But the prep for that was terrible. The prep for colonoscopy was absolutely terrible. It was disgusting. And there were some times I was like, I don't think I'm going to make it. Not to mention the effects of the bowel prep, which I won't get into the grisly details here, but let's just say I got 0 sleep that night. 0 sleep. And fast forward, go do the colonoscopy. Turns out that everything came through completely clear in all sense of the term. There's no cancer or anything, because there is a history of colon cancer in my family as well. Which, as soon as I told like my doctor that at the appointment, they were like, "Yep, colonoscopy like tomorrow, make it happen." As soon as I said, "Yeah, there's melanoma in my family," like, "Oh, dermatologist tomorrow, make it happen." But the colonoscopy itself was actually kind of okay. There was other than, hey, you're in a hospital gown and all that. But you go in, they ask me if I needed to go to the bathroom one more time before we start. And there was a part of me that kind of went, I could probably go. But the other part of me went, this is fixing to be the doctor's problem, not my problem. Because as soon as I am out, whatever happens is your problem.
Right.
And so they wheel me in. They put the IV in, and the IV is just kind of sore, and so I'm not a fan of needles to begin with. And the doctor says, or the attending or nurse or whatever says, now it's going to feel a little warm in your IV. So they didn't do any countdowns, and they didn't do any of that. And I just remember going, I don't feel anything. I hope it's okay. I hope they don't start without me being down. And then I looked up at the monitor, which has like the camera, and they're pointing it like around the room. And and I just remember seeing the monitor kind of go whoop, whoop, kind of like when you're like buzzed a little bit, how the room, it kind of went whoop, whoop. And then literally the next thing I remember is boop, 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 my heart rate monitor. And I was back in the area where I first started. And I think, were you there already?
Oh yeah.
You were there while I was waiting?
No. When they brought you in, and then they came and got me. Yep. But you were asleep when I got back there.
Right. Because I was like, this feels great. Like this, people had told me this is the best nap you're ever going to have. And it was. I felt really, really great. Mm-hmm. It was like time travel. Not like when you fall asleep, it's like, even though you don't really notice time, I think there's a subconscious like awareness that time has passed that your brain logs. But because this was a propofol, is that a propanol? Mm-hmm. Right? Whatever the name of it is. It's you actually don't go completely unconscious. You just don't remember that stretch of time, right? So there's an alternate universe version of Dave who has a clear, distinct memory of that procedure. My astral self. See what I did there?
I see what you did there. A little Doctor Strange.
And if I had any astral projections, and that's the doctor's problem and not mine.
See?
But it was like time travel. It was like kind of close your eyes. And I don't even remember closing my eyes, just the monitor spinning a little bit and then hearing the monitor again. But even still, that was like the only sleep I'd had because I'd stayed up all the night before. So everything came back clear, even have photos. I'm going to spare you and not show you photos of the inside of my
gross. They're just
clear. It just looks like
clear.
Yeah. It kind of looks like a dune sandworm, but I'm imagining, but without the teeth.
I have nothing to say to that.
Nope.
I have no reply whatsoever.
But it's very, very, very clear. So I got the all clear. 5 years later, I'm going to have to go get it done again. And so this is where I encourage you, Mrs. 52Qs, that you've got to do one. I don't know how you're going to make it through the.
I've already done the at-home screening, and it came back fine. So
the poop in a box screening.
Yeah, my doctor is also your doctor.
Yes.
So if there was any trouble, she would send me because she sent you.
But I do want to encourage, if you're watching this right now, if you're listening to this right now, I can't stress how important getting colon screening is. It's one of the, if not the most preventable type of cancer. And if you catch it early, polyps that might be precancerous, kind of like, this mole or whatever, then the survival rate is like astronomically better than if you just keep putting it off. Yes, the prep sucks. The lack of sleep sucks. The amount of times that you have to run to the bathroom, else anyway, that sucks. But the peace of mind on being on the other side of this and knowing that although that colon cancer runs in my family, that for right now, 50-year-old Dave is free and clear is I'm telling you, is worth the price of admission, which is drinking a gallon of seawater mixed with Gatorade. And so even then, as far as my week moving forward and why you didn't get an episode this past week, that's what this whole episode is about.
Sorry. I was just going to say, all of that is just a setup for
it's a prelude
the worst part.
to the last several days, which as soon as I got done, that was on a Monday. And then on a Tuesday, actually Monday afternoon, we start getting the word about Hurricane Milton. Hurricane Milton was forming off the coast of Mexico. And in the span of 18 hours, went from a Category 1 to a Category 5, to the point where the meteorologists were saying the pressure should not be mathematically possible.
This isn't mathematically possible.
Right. This is starting to break the laws of thermodynamics and physics as we know it. And every single model and every single track had it coming directly, literally over our house.
And it did.
And okay, so I want to spoil the ending here. We're fine. We made it through okay.
Look, we're alive.
We never lost power. And the only damage is some knocked over trees around our neighborhood. Now, that's just us. There are people that, as of this recording, people in Orlando who still don't have power. Mm-hmm. There are people who, whether it's Milton or Helene, don't have running water. In fact, I think just today they connected the last pipe to get Asheville's running water. So I don't say all that to diminish, but I just want to, just so you're not thinking, what happened to Dave and Shannon? We're okay. And a huge thank you to everybody who reached out to us, whether by text or whether by comments or direct messages in 52Q's emails. It means so much. Facebook, LinkedIn, I got messages because, you know, we're in Orlando and everybody knows we're in Orlando and everybody saw this track. But the week leading up into that was genuinely terrifying.
It was. And, you know, there were things about this that were odd from the very beginning. As you said, it's forming off the coast of Mexico and the Gulf Coast. They don't form there.
Nope. Most of the time they come from the coast of Africa.
Right. It was just very odd, and it strengthened so fast. And the energy in the storm was so huge that they were calling for 10 to 15 foot flood surge.
Yep. Where
it came in at Tampa, and it came in a little bit lower than that, a little bit more southerly of that. But they're talking about water covering your house. And I was watching the news, and the mayor of Tampa just said, if you're in one of these evacuation zones and you choose not to leave, you will die.
Yeah.
I've never heard a public official say that, you know.
Write your name and Sharpie on your arm so I guess they can identify your remains. I mean, this is some real apocalyptic type talk. Mm-hmm. And what made it even worse is we're like 3 days out from the actual storm making landfall, because the storm didn't make landfall.
We usually get like a week or so warning.
Yeah. But
this one just popped up.
Not dire. Like it was dire emergency, evacuate for like 3 straight days from Tuesday to Wednesday. I guess it would be like Monday is when like that's when things started.
Most everybody, if you'll remember, Dave, most everybody prepped on Monday.
Yep.
And then we're kind of hunkered down. Well, we couldn't on Monday because you had your colonoscopy that morning. Yep. And then, you know, obviously you're not brimming with energy. I mean, we could have done some of it, of course, but we were cool. Okay, we're going to wait till Tuesday. It's fine. And at this point, I had just written off everything else in the world except me and my husband and my mama and my house and my kitties, you know? And so we didn't start getting our stuff together until Tuesday. And at that point, they said, okay, if you live in Orlando, you've got to have it buttoned up. You got to be all stowed and in your home and hanging out by Wednesday at lunchtime.
Yep.
So in addition to the sudden freakiness of this thing, we had some pressure on us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the waiting started. And you know, I've waited for hurricanes before. I hate that time between, like, I've done everything I can do, and I'm completely helpless watching this storm blow over me. If you've never lived through a hurricane, it's really, really, really scary. We've had, I think, 4 big ones since we've lived here, Dave, and various tropical storms and stuff. We don't even, look out the window for a tropical storm.
We don't even bring in the wind chimes for a tropical storm.
It's like, all right. But so we had the pressure of time. And then once that was done, it was Wednesday, it's lunchtime, we're sitting there, Full Sail has closed down. And we're just kind of waiting. And then the storm slowed down. And it really is true. We've got great predictors. We've got hurricane hunters out there flying over the hurricane, you know.
Turns out they were only off by 10 miles from the storm track
crazy.
that they had tracked on Monday. So by the time it finally made landfall late Wednesday, the storm track was only off by 10 miles.
Yeah.
That is mind-blowing. That they can be that accurate. But it also means that there are 3 straight days of this boulder rolling to you in slow motion and you are not able to move, right? Mm-hmm. It's like that scene in Austin Powers when he's on the Zamboni and the guy's like, no. And then you look back and it's just this really slow moving thing. Mm-hmm. It's just like that. And it's just this sense of dread sets into the entire area, especially knowing every single track went directly over our house.
Yeah. So we're sitting around on Wednesday and we're just waiting and waiting and waiting. And, you know, obviously Dave didn't record a podcast that morning. And, you know, we're thinking, okay, this is going to be out of here by Thursday morning is what they were telling us. We'll be back. Everything's fine. And it slowed down. And so it didn't actually hit us till the middle of the night on Thursday morning, which then, of course, you can't sleep. Being in a hurricane, as I said, is very scary. It's very loud.
Yep.
You have all of the wind and all of the rain, but then you'll hear something crack or break or
the house just kind of moving, you know, the wind.
Or you see the windows. We saw this a lot. We've got Category 3 windows on our house, but they were like,
kind of bowing.
That was actually with Irma when Irma came through. But anyway, it's very unsettling. It's very frightening, and there's nothing in the world that you can do about it, whether you stay or go or whatever. Nothing you can do about it. It's absolutely out of your control, which, you know, on top of travel and colonoscopy and, you know, it's just another thing. But what was interesting, I think, was, so it moved out during the day on Thursday. And a couple of things are interesting to me. The first is the way it went over us. I want to talk about that in just a second. Mm-hmm. The second thing that was interesting to me was after this week of kind of abject dread and terror and what's going to happen, am I going to have a home? And, you know, when that Friday rolled around and we should just go back to work, everything should be fine, I was exhausted.
Yeah.
I kept trying to get up and come into my office and do some work or something, and I couldn't do it.
It's like whatever the version of shell-shocked was, it felt like that.
Yeah, it just took so much energy to kind of sit vigil for this hurricane, you know, that even when I could get back to it, I couldn't. So we chilled out on Friday. We took some just really chill weekend. And then yesterday and today, I'm feeling pretty much back to normal. But it was a very strange experience. It was unlike anything else I've ever seen in terms of like just fear.
Yeah.
People were afraid, and we don't really get afraid for hurricanes down here. We don't love them.
Yeah, not in Orlando, because we are so far inland from the West Coast that anything that's coming from the Gulf has to go like all over Tampa and Lakeland and Claremont. It's got to work its way. I don't know. It's 75 miles or so inland, and we're like 50 miles inland from the East Coast. And so anything that's coming up the East Coast, especially since so few hurricanes hit perpendicular to the East Coast, that's where the real damage happens, is when hurricanes hit land perpendicular. And that's what was happening with Milton. So there's all these warning signs. There's like 3 straight days, wall to wall media coverage, wall to wall weather. And we watched it all. We had it on. There were a couple of times we're like, okay, all right, we are full. We've got it. I'm a bit of a weather junkie when it comes to that kind of stuff.
I'm a huge weather junkie, but even I have my limits.
Yeah, it kind of became a little bit of whatever the weather equivalent of doom scrolling is. It kind of became a little bit like that. So, but you were very gracious. You were like, Dave, let's, and I said, I think I'm going to turn this off. And so we did. We got some separation. We also had an MCU marathon. So there was that.
Yes,
Yep,
which
so
were only... Anyway, that's not important.
No.
What I did want to talk about was what happened. Why didn't it? Okay, we're living in this existential dread. And then Friday, everything's fine. What happened? First of all, because of where you are in the storm and, whether you're on the northeast edge or the south, it does different things depending on where you are in relative terms to the storm. And, it was slated to roll right up over our house, and I took a screenshot of my computer when it was doing that, and it was, we had something, I think, Dave, it was 40 tornado warnings.
40 tornado warnings.
And,
the tornadoes were much worse than...
Yes.
Than
and we don't get tornadoes down here really very
not
much, just
yep.
every now and then. And as we were watching these tornado warnings, we're like, oh, that's a little bit southeast of us, and it's moving northwest. And so then they started, how they'll go in and they'll show street names, and we're like, there's our street.
Wow. And they're like highlighting, look at this rotation.
Look at this rotation.
Air masses, and a tornado might
on
pop
your
up right
street.
Here. Yeah.
I was like, okay,
all right,
cool.
All right.
We
no
know
tornado sirens had gone
getting...
on yet.
I don't think we have tornado sirens,
really?
Dave.
I mean, we did get
those
the
text alerts.
Yeah, we did get the text
we
alerts.
We had them in Memphis, obviously. Memphis gets way more tornadoes. Anyway, so here we have this week of abject dread, and then an outbreak of tornadoes. Mm-hmm. And so we're watching this happen, and I'm just thinking, the worst isn't going to hit us for another hour or two after that. And I'm just thinking, oh my God, we're done for.
Yeah, this is it.
And I took a picture of that moment, and it's the big old hurricane. And I can't explain this. I just know that I'm grateful. As it was coming around and looping around, as it hit our neighborhood, it kind of fell apart in that spot.
Yeah, as it was churning, it was like it would hit right above our street, and then just kind of boop, as if there were I guess I don't know, some barrier or something.
I can't explain it. So all that we ever got was the very edge of the worst part of it here at our house. Now, obviously, other places in Florida didn't fare so well.
Yeah.
But I can't explain that. Don't know why it happened, but I'm grateful to God and the universe and whoever that we came through it so nicely and so well. But this one was scary. In a different kind of way than they have been previously.
Yeah. It's, the strength of the storm, how spot on they were with the tracking, with the fact that it was hitting perpendicular, with the fact that they had evacuated the entire West Coast, all the way up to the Bend, and they started evacuating the East Coast. And just so you know, Orlando very rarely ever has to evacuate because you don't have to evacuate from wind. It's water that you have to evacuate from. In fact, here in Florida, they say, run from water, hide from wind. So the reason they evacuate is because storm surges are going to be so high that they're just going to drown, like tsunamis essentially hitting the coast. So if a tsunami was, or not tsunami, but if a storm surge was big enough to hit Orlando, then there are much bigger problems. I mean, we're talking day after tomorrow type stuff.
Yeah. Well, Orlando is where everybody from the coast evacuates to.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And so my sister texted, is like, are you sure you don't need to evacuate? I'm like, no, it's all good. We're good. But wind damage and everything we have to be super careful with. So what's the whole point of all of this other than where have we been? I mean, that's literally where we've been the last few weeks. But it's just life comes at you. And there are times where, first of all, you're really thankful to have people in your life, like Mrs. 52Qs for me, who you can quite literally ride the storm out with, who will speak truth when you are not in your right headspace, who will remind you that the things that you are doing, like drinking a gallon of seawater so that you can poo for 12 straight hours, that on the other side of it, this is ultimately for your good, especially, the taking care of your health and all of that. There are times when you are called to be a grown-up, even though I feel like I'm just making it up as I go. And I have to think that our parents felt the same way, right?
And they didn't even have the internet.
No.
To help them out. How do I stop my 12-year-old from crying?
Our grandparents. And so everybody is just doing the best they can in whatever situation, whether it's traveling or colonoscopies or hurricanes or lawyers and being super naive when it comes to a lawyer and realizing that every time you send this is bonus tip. Here's
your music production tip.
Here's your sliver of production music that you've been waiting for an hour and 15 minutes. Every email you send to a lawyer is billable hours. Every time they get back to you, that is billable hours. Every time you say, oh, what about this? Like, for example, if you are working up contracts as a publishing entity, every time you say, oh, here's a contract I think I really, really like. I like this paragraph and everything. What do you think? Every time you do that, you have to cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. Because when we got our bill, it was almost twice as much as we had budgeted. It was almost twice as much as the retainer that we had given on the front end to take care of this. And so that was a bit of a shock. And that was just pure naivete and scope creep. Lesson learned. Thank you. Thank you, universe, for that. But that's the bonus tip for you. But
we should do an episode on scope creep.
We should.
Seriously, how to recognize it before it becomes a problem and addressing it and all that.
Yeah.
Just an idea.
Yeah. And I've already talked to our lawyer because we're grownups and we have lawyers and accountants and tax people. And he wants to be on the show. And so this is going to come up. I'm going to talk about this.
Yes.
And why you need a lawyer and why you need to understand how all of this works.
And he's a super great guy. I can't wait to have him on the podcast because he's very knowledgeable, very kind, and those two don't always go hand in hand.
He specializes in entertainment law as it pertains to music publishing. That's like his lane. And so came very highly recommended. Awesome. Zero regrets other than Dave needs to learn how this works because we got the bill. It's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes because it was all itemized.
Yep.
So that is the Kropf House tale of conferences and colons and storms. Oh my. Thank you so much. If you're still listening, I appreciate you.
Bless you.
Bless you. Thank you for your support.
Thanks for listening to our story.
Yeah, I hope it was interesting, just being real and being transparent with you. And this is life as life happens. We will get back to our regularly scheduled programming starting next week with a production music topic. See, I'm so out of sorts still that I'm not even sure exactly what the episode is, but you know who will know? Future Dave. Future
That's
Dave
right.
will know exactly what the topic's going to be. But tomorrow, Mrs. 52Qs and I are taking a day because, like I said at the beginning, we're supposed to be in the mountains of Georgia right now. We had to cancel that trip because of these hurricanes. Could we technically have done it? I think probably. I think the house that we had rented was still fine, but just with everything as it's been going, and in order to get our deposit back in time, we had to make the call even before, we had to make the call last Monday. Mm-hmm. Keep in mind, last Monday, we were like, we might be out of power for a week. And so we bought a bunch of snacks. Anyways. And so we're supposed to be in North Carolina or in Georgia right now. But one of the things that we are doing and that we were going to do on this trip was to have a day that we're going to set aside for brainstorming, for vision casting, and for basically saying, what do we want to do in 2025? Shannon, I don't know about you, but I'm really looking forward to tomorrow.
Oh, I love it when we get to just kind of leave the clock and the appointment book behind and just kind of go dream a little bit,
Yep.
and it's a little bit like, I don't know, what would you think was cool? I don't know. What do you think is cool?
Yeah.
And then it just kind of blossoms from there. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. We've got some amazing things on the horizon. I met with multiple publishers at PMC and basically got some orders for some albums for the briefing room. And tomorrow we're going to put those on a calendar and we're going to start.
Yeah, we are.
Start making it happen. And so that is what's happening next week. But Shannon, Mrs. 52Qs, it's always a delight to have you on the podcast. We need to do it more. You're my favorite person.
You're my favorite person too. And, we've always done everything together our entire lives, which sounds weird and codependent, but it's not. We just happen to land at the same spots doing the same things because, we're pretty high functioning people. And the reason I say that is coming back around to this idea of God, these past couple of weeks have been really weird.
Yeah.
And if it throws us, it's going to throw anybody.
That's right.
Come on.
That's right. And it is no exaggeration to say that 52Qs, community, the business, this is absolutely has been the highlight of our lives because we are now, instead of helping somebody else build their dream, we are now putting our hands together side by side on this venture that is 52Qs and the production music journey. And I'm just thankful for you, for joining us and for being along, whether you are just passing by and happen to catch this on the YouTube or on the podcast feed, or maybe you're family, friends, or neighbor subscribers. Either way, just know that I love and appreciate you, just like I love and appreciate you, Shannon.
I love and appreciate you too, Dave.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much. And I hope you've had a good week. I hope it's been less eventful as our week has been. But even if it has, I know, trust and believe that next week is going to be amazing. How do I know that? Because I trust and believe that the universe has amazing plans just for you. Until next time, peace. The 52Qs podcast is copyright 2024 818 Studios, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used with permission and for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the community or becoming a member subscriber of 52Qs, head over to 52qs.com.